Okay, Brad mentioned experience. I've got a quote about experience that I learned several years ago. Experience is what you get when you don't get the results you expected. So what we're trying to do is build on, let you start with my experience, which is the things I experienced when I didn't get the results I expected. So hopefully that will, I'm taking care of the frustration, most of the frustration for you. Alright, so next we're going to talk about fuel tank. If your fuel tank's been sitting around for 10 years and no fuel's been used out of it, chances are you're going to have a lot of muck in it. We took some material out of a fuel tank one time that looked like asphalt. And also coming out of the same fuel tank was sand and rocks. So, and they kind of separated. So you probably, if your tanks have been sitting around for a long time, there are companies that you can send them to get them cleaned out, to get the rust cleaned out, get them resealed. That's probably a good idea if they're close by. If they're not close by and you're going to have to pay to ship it back, you might consider a new tank. They make them out of aluminum. They're made down in Florida, and you can get them through us. And he likes to have your old tank, he likes to have your measurements, but he does have quite a few plans for various tanks, and he can identify them by the boat. The other thing you'll see here is originally they put a copper fuel line in. Over time this copper will work harden like a paper clip in a really bad meeting, you know, where you take the paper clip and you work it back and forth until it fractures. So these valves, this valve probably won't move. Yep, it won't. So the replacement of that valve, and then we use Coast Guard approved fuel hose, and we think that's much safer than the copper line. The other things of interest here.
What's this other?
Oh, that's for your vent.
Where does the vent go?
It goes to the outside of the boat. It's on the transom on this boat. Sometimes it'll be on the side. Now,
is that's what's coming out right here?
Yeah. And what'll happen? I like to get the little plugs like you put in bass boats.
Okay.
You know, for that's the whole plug you put in a bass boat. You can buy them. You can buy them from us, or you can buy them from any Kmart or Walmart. The replacement ones. And I like to, when I'm transporting the boat, I put one of these plugs in here. The reason being, this tank will slosh, and the fuel will come out on your varnish and ruin your varnish work. So I put one of those in. You have to take it out before you start going, or you'll not be able to get fuel in here.
This is not a vented cap, is it?
It's not a vented cap. It might be loose enough to not.
I never have been able to get that off.
It'll break loose eventually. All right, so then let's see.
Is there a fuel gauge?
Some boats still have a fuel gauge, and the fuel sender will be located in here. The fuel senders, especially if you got any muck in your tank, they'll be toast. Okay. There is now an electronic fuel sender that's made, so if you have, this one doesn't have one, but if you have to replace a fuel sender, I suggest electronic. They run about 130 bucks. The others run about 40 bucks. I've put new senders in, and they've not worked right from the very beginning. Yeah. So I put a new electronic sender in. Bingo, everything's fine.
Does the electronic then mount inside the tank, or is it mount outside?
Yeah, it drops down inside the tank. It's just a cylinder, no moving parts.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's a much better sender. But again, you don't have a sender here. This would have had a stick. It had a part number and everything. This would have had a mahogany stick, and it would have been graduated for quarter tank, half tank, you know, 3/4.
And you
actually stuck your tank, and that stick stayed. You stored that stick in your boat. Yeah.
Okay. I think I'll go authentic for a while.
Yeah. Well, it's cheap and it's very reliable.
Oh yes, I bet.
Very reliable. You know, I've got a fuel gauge in my 1960 Capri. I've changed the gauge has been rebuilt, and the sender. I put a new sender in, and this is the brand new sender that didn't work right from the very beginning. As long as my gauge is bouncing, I know I've got gas. If it stops bouncing, it's time to go home.
Now, there is no fuel gauge on the dashboard. So if we were to put an electronic gauge on here, we would have to cut another hole, or we'd have to mount it someplace else, and that would not be good.
If you wanted a fuel gauge and you wanted to be accurate when you went to a show, you'd want to do that fuel gauge in stealth mode. You want to put it under your dash, out of the way, where you could see it when you really look for it. Yeah. We've done the same thing with extra switches. Like we'll install blowers. We'll install a blower back underneath the here. And we'll run our blower hose under the floor under the flooring to under the engine, and we'll put the switch under the dash so that it can't be seen.
Okay. What about, that does bring up this engine box idea. Now mine's pretty rotted out. I didn't even bring it down here with me today, but they're just a plywood box. Is that correct?
They're a plywood box. These would have been a plywood with a beauty grain.
Okay.
And then it would have had, in 59, it should have had a vinyl.
Yes, it does. It has a bolster top. Okay.
But the sides were actually beauty grain. Some of those got bad, and people would upholster the sides then, you know, so that they could cover up the mess that they had.
Okay.
But they were originally a beauty grain.
Okay. Well, it shouldn't be any problem for me to build a new one. What about seats and floors?
Seats and floors, we have found through experience that if now this flooring was actually painted green, believe it or not, and that is the green that it was painted, and you had a tango red interior, which is kind of an orangey red, and white interior. So made for a real interesting, at the very least, interesting color combination. Okay, and so the flooring, if you've got vinyl on the floors and you're wanting to replace the vinyl because of its condition, we can match whatever vinyl was original in your boat. The caution I'd give you is probably it's just about as cheap to go ahead and make new marine plywood floors as it is to strip off that stuff and then put stripper on the glue and strip the glue off and then smooth it off. Spend all this time smoothing it out and then gluing your new stuff down. It's just about as easy to cut out new floors.
Okay. Now the floors are plywood, or are they that
they were plywood.
MDO?
They were plywood.
Plywood.
You could probably use MDO if you're going to cover it. I have not done that, and the reason being I don't know if I encapsulate that fiber layer on the medium density overlay, if it's going to separate after, you know, when moisture can't escape from that side. So I've not experimented with that.
But now and so all the seat frames and everything were also 1/2-inch ply?
They've been 1/2-inch ply.
And then painted?
Yeah. Now some of the seat frames, some of the seat bottoms will be 3/4 inch.
Okay, yeah, I didn't bring any of those with me.
Or 7/8 mahogany. But like your seat bottom, in 59, you probably would have had cushions.
Yes.
But your Mariners Museum information will tell you for